intentional self-development. Have you ever thought about that?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that distinguishes authentic leadership from being authentic, because being authentic is really about embracing yourself as who you are. And we've talked about that before. If you're a surgeon, or you want to be a surgeon, and you don't have the skills to be a surgeon, then your behaviors are not really going to suit you. You don't want to be giving you a scalpel. It's
right.
And intention is not a great thing as well. It's like, I mean, I love my mum and I love how she cares for me, but if I need brain surgery and she's coming at me with a scalpel, I'm going to say, Mom,
right,
step back.
Right.
And leadership,
you know how to make a great cake and a whatever, but
yeah, absolutely. And that's where leadership is a process we've talked about before. Leadership is not, it's not something you go to a supermarket and buy. Right. You actually learn the skills, and intentional self-development, as you're talking about, is really something about developing the skills while maintaining your core values.
Yeah, and constant development. It's not like you're always refining that. And where do you go to get those skills? Like, who do you know, what are the books that you're reading? What are the courses that you're taking?
Yeah.
What are the actions that you're taking so that you can actually, and I think this is also one of the key things, is you can read all the books. You can take all the courses. But the key thing is, part of the development is putting it into action and doing it consistently, and then also being able to reflect on what you're doing so that you can actually see, am I learning? Am I taking those things and putting them into practice?
Integrating it.
Right.
And that's what we talk about being with authentic leadership, because you have those two components where people talk about being authentic, so they're being themselves. And yes, you should be authentic to your values. We talk about that a lot. Your values are the core, they're the driver, but then behaviors are separate because the behaviors are how you go about achieving that. And that's where integrating, you were mentioning that, they're actually doing what you're learning. Right. And I know I was very guilty of this. I used to read book after book after book and not integrate anything. My behavior stayed the same. And I had all this conscious knowledge I knew, but unconsciously I hadn't integrated anything. And it wasn't until I stopped. And there was one book, it was it actually isn't a book, it's an audio. It's Wayne Dyer's How to Be a No Limit Person, which is a combination of a live speak and him in the studio reflecting on parts that he's talked about. And I love that you mention reflection all the time, because it's actually, you get that in the audio. He's reflecting on the points that he's talked about in the live speak, and this was in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
He was speaking there. And it was, so I listened to that over and over and over again, and then those things actually integrated. And that's when you talk about intentional self-development. One of the key things, and I know you talk about this a lot, Jaclyn, is people, they have an idea, but they don't actually integrate it and use it.
Right, and it's using it, and then, and you talk about this too a lot, Damian, is when you read something, it goes into the conscious.
Yes.
And then by doing it and doing it consistently, then you can get to the point where it becomes unconscious. But you have to be thinking about it. It has to go from being thought to becoming the unconscious thought.
Absolutely.
And that flip does take time and practice. It takes as you just said, listening to something over and over again, that repetition, the consistency of doing something. And I think probably the other thing too is maybe even having somebody that you can say, I'm doing X, Y, and Z as my development. Please be my, partner. Let me know, like, are you seeing a change, or are you seeing a difference? Like, who's the accountability person, or how are you holding yourself accountable to that change?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, when you talk about the change as well, people talk about it's hard to do this. And they're right to a point. And this, I'd like to make that distinction. Right. I was having the discussion with my son's karate sensei, who's a 7th Dan black belt. And we're talking about hard and easy, and he was talking about how things are hard. And I said, well, hang on a minute. It's relative to your skill. You're a 7th Dan black belt. If I asked you to do grading at a yellow belt level, how hard is that? And he goes, well, it'd be easy. And I said, well, hard or easy is relative to your skill. And this is where making those changes that we're talking about is, from the perspective of, it needs to be an unconscious change, because that's how we behave.
Right.
But integrating things into your unconscious, when you know the skills of doing that, it becomes really easy and can happen really, really fast. It can happen in an instant when you know the skills.
When you know the skills.
Yeah.
But how do you know the skills, though? How do you get to that point?
Well,
That's the practice part. That's the you don't become the the great sensei by waking up one day and saying, I'm going to be a great sensei.
Yep.
I'm going to have to go through all the belts, and then I'm going to have to keep doing it and keep practicing at it so that I can refine.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I always love to say, you always hear that people saying, Tom Brady didn't wake up coming out of the womb being the great quarterback.
No,
he
didn't.
kept working at it. As a matter of fact, actually, and so many people, this happens. Like, do you think most people become a sensation overnight? Like, where do they come from? Well, guess what? They were working on their skills.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, you become it becomes that unconscious thing. Oh, because you're working on it so much that in X situation, I know to do Y.
Yeah. And that makes a difference. It's working on it. It's doing the actions, or in the case of working with your unconscious, it's the opposite. This is where a lot of people get tricked, because and we've all been there.
Yeah.
I know I've been there, where it's like putting in more and more effort to try and make it happen. But when you're talking to your unconscious, it's actually the opposite. You've actually got to quiet your conscious mind and allow to be able to tap into. So you've actually got to do less to achieve more. And I love the analogy from motor racing. It's smooth is fast. So it seems like you're actually going slow, but you're putting in a fast lap time. And I'm going to rub that in a little bit to my friend Vic, who we went to go-karts the other night. And, and that was that is the process where we talk to when we're looking at intentional self-development.
Yeah.
It's having that clear objective of where you want to go. So you understand your values, which we talk about.
Right.
Authentistic leadership is knowing your values, because that's your core. And then your behaviors become what you do, and that develops, because leadership is behaviors,
right?
Because you're interacting with other people. But to get to those behaviors quickly, it's actually doing less by being clear about what it is, and then allowing your unconscious to lead you that way.
Right. But also there's a training of the unconscious mind.
Correct.
And that's because you've got to get there to train it. As you're sitting there talking, I was thinking about in the movie Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes, great movie. That's such a great movie.
Matt Damon talks about that feeling of being on the road, and the driver whose name I'm forgetting right now. Yeah. There's one scene where he's about to shift the gear into, go to 7, right? Yeah. And this vision of him just feeling the road and the car, and he just knew unconsciously when.
Yeah, it's being in the zone.
Right, being in the zone.
Yeah,
right.
And that's when you tap into your unconscious, and that's what we're talking about, that intentional self-development. Yeah. When you're clear about where you want to go, you know your values. And then the behaviors, being in that zone, it comes to you.
Right.
What to do.
Yeah, and some people call it being in the zone, being in the flow.
Yeah, in the flow is another way, right? In the moment.
Right, and you just... It becomes a beautiful thing, and then but the other key thing is that as a leader, people can see that and sense it. And I probably have said this more times than I can count. It becomes, the emotions that attract other people.
Absolutely.
Vibe attracts
There's a confidence,
right?
Yeah.
And what you're embodying, people are like, oh, I want to be around that. I want to learn from that. I want to learn from, I want to learn from Damian. I want to learn from Jaclyn. I want to learn from my leader, because there's that sense of confidence and being that just comes out when you're in that zone or flow.
And what that does too in that flow, as you're talking about, when you're talking about that, you're so naturally inspiring people. You look at the great leaders, Steve Jobs, was a great classic of that, but there's so many others. And they inspired people not by what they did, but by who they are, which is what you're talking about. Just because of who they are, they were in that zone more often than not. And that confidence, because they were clear about where they were going, they weren't busy, so that wasn't distracting other people from unconsciously picking up on where they were going.
Yeah. And you just said, they were not distracted. They knew where they were going. They knew what lane to be in. They also knew how, who to lean on and who they were surrounding themselves with.
Yeah. It's funny how we talk about, when talking about intentional self-development, that intentional self-development, the word intentional is really important there.
Yeah.
It's not action self-development.
Right.
It's
right.
Because a lot of times, exactly what we're talking about, we're actually taking the action component out of it. We're having a clear, direct, we understand what our values are, which is core to authentic leadership. We have a clear goal of what we're working towards, and then we're intentionally self-developing, but in doing so, we're actually stepping back and allowing our conscious mind to quieten. So the unconscious then just leads us to where we're going. It's like when you're driving, you don't think about turning the indicators on, you just do it.
Right, you just do it.
Yeah.
Right. Or sometimes, how many times have we done this, where you get up, you get into your car and you just start to drive. And you're like, oh, how did I get here?
Absolutely.
Right? And because it just...
You're in flow.
You're in flow.
Yeah. And that's part of that, when we're talking intentional self-development, it is really that process of knowing and trusting where you're going. Because how often have we had that experience? I know I've done it. You think, me being, especially when I was younger and being a smart ass and thought I knew everything.
Right. I think we've all been that younger self thinking I know everything, smart ass, right?
Exactly.
Or don't try to change me because I know it all.
Yeah,
right?
and how often have we gone, we know what we're doing, consciously we go, we've got this, and then you go and do it, and it's like it all falls apart and goes. And then other times you think you don't know what you're doing, and you surprise yourself with how well you do.
Right.
So what's the difference there? It's that unconscious. And this is where, when we're talking authentic leadership, it is really leaning back or leaning into, whichever way you want to go, is in leaning into not forcing it to happen, but being clear about where you're going and then trusting that your unconscious is going to bring to the surface what you need to do in that moment.